In late 2024, a final-year university student sat alone in a campus library long after midnight. The building was silent, the kind of silence that usually signals discipline and achievement. His laptop was open. Around him were books he had studied for years, notes he had memorized, and assignments he had completed with care. On paper, everything was going well. His grades were solid. His lecturers had no concerns. His family believed he was on the right path. By every traditional measure, he was succeeding. But instead of reviewing material for his final exams, he was typing a question into a search engine that made him uncomfortable. What skills will actually matter in 2026? It was not a question his lecturers had asked him. It was not written into any syllabus, and yet it felt more urgent than anything he had studied that semester. It lingered in his mind because it touched something deeper than coursework. It questioned the relevance of the entire system he had trusted for years. As he scrolled through reports from employers, economists, and research institutions, a quiet realization settled in. He had learned how to pass. He had learned how to comply. He had learned how to reproduce information accurately under time pressure. But no one had clearly explained how to think independently, adapt intelligently, or decide responsibly in a world changing faster than his degree program could update its curriculum. He began to see a gap, not a dramatic failure, but a silent one, a gap between what education promised and what reality demanded, a gap between credentials and capability, a gap between preparation and participation in the real world. That moment is happening to students everywhere. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. It happens in libraries, dorm rooms, internet cafes, and bedrooms late at night. It happens when students read job postings they feel underprepared for. It happens when they realize that memorization no longer guarantees relevance. It happens when they sense that something essential is missing, but cannot yet name it. Tonight, this is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is investigation. This is vantage. And what follows is not about grades, certificates, or academic prestige. It is about function, about dignity, about whether education is preparing students for the world they are entering, not the world their institutions remember. It is about what students must carry within themselves when systems change, when certainty dissolves, and when answers are no longer provided in advance. The central question is simple but uncomfortable. What does a student actually need to know to function in 2026? Not to graduate, not to impress, but to think clearly, to decide responsibly, to resist manipulation, and to adapt faster than systems collapse. These are not abstract concerns. They are practical, immediate, and unavoidable. Students today are entering a world defined by volatility rather than stability, by constant revision rather than long-term certainty. And yet, much of education still assumes a predictable future that no longer exists. Why this question matters? By 2026, more than 70% of jobs will involve AI-assisted decision-making. This does not mean humans will be irrelevant. It means humans will increasingly work alongside systems that influence outcomes faster than any individual can fully monitor. Synthetic media will blur the line between truth and fabrication, making it harder to trust what is seen, heard, or shared. Climate volatility will disrupt food systems, water access, and energy infrastructure, affecting livelihoods and migration patterns. Mental health strain among students will reach historic levels as pressure, uncertainty, and comparison intensify. Trust in institutions, governments, media, education itself will continue to erode. The world students are entering does not reward obedience. It rewards clarity under pressure. Education, however, still largely rewards recall, compliance, and speed. It measures success through standardized outputs rather than adaptive capacity. The mismatch is growing, and students feel it, even when institutions do not acknowledge it openly. So tonight, we examine 7 life skills every student will need by 2026. These are not academic subjects. They are human capacities, and they determine who navigates the future with agency and who is managed by it. Skill 1: Cognitive resilience. In 2023, neuroscientists confirmed something unsettling. The average human attention span dropped below 8 seconds. By 2025, anxiety-related learning disorders increased globally by nearly 38%. These figures are not merely statistics. They represent lived experiences of students struggling to focus, process information, and maintain emotional balance in overstimulating environments. Many assumed distraction was the problem. It is not. The real crisis is mental fragility under pressure. Students today are not incapable. They are overstimulated without training. Cognitive resilience is the ability to think clearly when emotions spike, information overwhelms, and urgency demands reaction. It is the capacity to pause when everything pushes toward immediacy. It is the skill of maintaining clarity when the environment is noisy, competitive, and emotionally charged. This skill is not built through comfort. It is built through structured exposure to difficulty. Just as physical strength develops through resistance, mental strength develops through challenge that is navigated consciously rather than avoided. Students who learn to pause, regulate attention, and tolerate uncertainty outperform peers in complex reasoning tasks, not because they are smarter, but because they remain calm. Calm minds notice patterns. Calm minds resist manipulation. Calm minds retain agency. Scripture captures this principle precisely. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. In 2026, the loudest environment will not be physical. Notifications, crises, opinions, and artificial urgency will compete constantly for attention. Students who cannot regulate their minds will outsource thinking to panic, crowds, or algorithms. Example: in Tokyo, a university piloted a controlled disruption program. Students wore wristbands that vibrated randomly during study sessions, mimicking stress. 6 months later, students trained under these conditions outperformed peers by 22% in problem-solving under pressure. Calmness had become skill. Skill 2: AI literacy. By 2026, artificial intelligence will not be optional. It will be invisible, embedded in admissions, hiring, credit scoring, content moderation, and risk assessment. Students will interact with AI systems daily, often without realizing it. Decisions about opportunity, access, and evaluation will increasingly be mediated by algorithms. Yet most students are taught how to use AI tools, not how to interrogate them. AI literacy is not about prompts, it is about power. Who trained the system? What data shaped its outputs? Who benefits from its decisions? Who is excluded? These questions determine whether technology serves humanity or quietly reshapes it without consent. A system that cannot be questioned becomes an authority. Authority without understanding becomes obedience. A wise saying applies here. He who knows the tool, but not its limits, becomes its servant. The most vulnerable student in 2026 will not be the one who resists AI. It will be the one who trusts it blindly. True literacy empowers students to collaborate with technology critically, not surrender judgment to it. If this investigation is challenging what you were taught about education, that is intentional. If you believe students deserve preparation for reality, not nostalgia, pause here. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Your engagement is not support alone. It is a declaration that education must evolve. Skill 3, sense-making in a post-truth world. By 2024, false information traveled 6 times faster than verified facts. By 2026, deepfake audio, video, and text will be nearly indistinguishable from reality to the untrained eye. The challenge students face is no longer identifying obvious falsehoods. It is navigating convincing distortions. The crisis is no longer misinformation. It is misinterpretation. Sense-making is the ability to slow thinking when everything demands speed, to connect patterns across disciplines, to tolerate ambiguity without surrendering judgment. It involves resisting emotional shortcuts and asking deeper questions about context, incentives, and consequences. An African proverb warns, "The one who rushes to answer has already stopped listening." Students who cannot make sense of complexity will be manipulated by those who can. Truth in 2026 will not shout, it will whisper. It will require patience, discernment, and intellectual humility to recognize. Skill 4, moral courage. Education teaches rules, rarely does it teach courage. But the dilemmas of 2026 will not be theoretical, they will be embedded in systems. Should an algorithm deny aid to someone flagged as high risk? Should data be sold if it benefits the institution? Should silence protect your future? In 2025, studies showed that nearly 2/3 of students would remain silent in the face of wrongdoing if speaking up threatened their careers. This reveals a gap between knowing what is right and acting on it. Scripture asks a question that cuts through every era. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Moral courage is not loud, it is consistent. It is choosing who you are when no rubric exists, when there is no immediate reward, and when the cost is personal. Skill 5, learning how to learn. By the time a student graduates in 2026, nearly 40% of what they learned in their first year may already be obsolete. This reality challenges the idea that education is primarily about storing information. Education is not accumulation, it is adaptation. The strongest learners are not those who know the most, but those who can identify outdated assumptions, dismantle them, and rebuild without ego. This requires humility, curiosity, and resilience. A proverb reminds us, "New wine bursts old skins." The future does not punish ignorance, it punishes rigidity. Skill 6, SYSTMS thinking. Climate change, inequality, and algorithmic bias are not isolated problems. They are systems interacting. Actions in one domain often produce consequences in another. Systems thinking allows students to see feedback loops, anticipate unintended consequences, and identify leverage points. It teaches them to move beyond simplistic solutions. In the Netherlands, students trained in systems mapping reduced urban energy waste by 18% without new technology, simply by seeing connections others missed. Power often lies not in strength, but in perspective. Skill 7, inner anchoring. By 2026, identity will be fluid, quantified, and constantly evaluated. Social platforms, metrics, and comparison will shape self-perception. Students without inner anchoring will drift, shaped by outrage cycles and approval metrics. Inner anchoring is grounded self-knowledge, values, limits, meaning that exists without applause. A wise saying captures it clearly. When the winds change, the rooted tree does not ask permission to stand. In a world obsessed with performance, anchoring teaches students to be. If you believe students deserve more than grades and debt, act. Subscribe for investigations like this. Like this documentary to push it past noise. Comment which skill education must adopt first. Share this because one informed student can change a classroom. Humanity has never had more power. We predict storms, edit genes, simulate intelligence. Yet we remain fragile. A virus halts economies. A flood erases cities. A silent algorithm reshapes opportunity. Nature does not negotiate. Power without wisdom accelerates collapse. Education, then, is not domination of the world, but alignment with its laws, truth, consequence, humility, responsibility. Students who understand this will not merely survive the future. They will steward it. Every generation faces a choice: to prepare learners for the world as it was, or for the world as it is becoming. This has been Vantage. The future is not waiting. And 2026 is already asking, who prepared and who merely passed?